Power on.
Welcome, Section 31 Agent. It's time for Sovryn Trek. And here's your host, Brian Sovryn.
Woo, the man of tomorrow is here to talk up some Star Trek on Sovryn Trek, baby. And, you know, it's not going to be this month. Of course, this is technically, I suppose this is technically March's, but, you know, we're a little bit into April, but that's okay. You're going to get a double dose. But you're not going to get a lot of news this month because we had, and actually Robin will be joining me here in a bit, and we had so many episodes of Season 2 of Discovery to talk about that it ended up going almost 2 hours on that alone. And generally, in fact, maybe at some point back when Sovryn Trek was originally called the Star Trek Update and was really just for Zomia ONE patrons, now that it's a public show, I don't think even then that there was a time where the show went over 2 hours. Maybe once I could think of where it went over 2 hours, but you know, generally I don't want that to happen. So not a lot of news. I have something I want to get into in the beginning here. Then we do have a comic book review to get into at the end of the episode after Rob and I talk about, we talk about all of the episodes. I mean, we've got a string of episodes to talk about with Star Trek Discovery, and it's amazing to consider that as of when this gets recorded, there will only be 2 episodes left to Season 2 of Discovery. Now, we know we're going to get a Season 3, but I don't know how they're going to wrap a lot of this stuff up. I don't know. We'll see. So anyway, something to open up with. So I did end up getting, now, me, longtime listeners of anything on Zomia ONE that I appear on, know that, like, I pre-order shit all the time. In fact, it's almost a bad habit for me because... Because I'll pre-order shit like a year or two before it ever even comes out. Like, I think I pre-ordered Wasteland 3. I mean, I pre-ordered that almost 3 years ago, you know, and it hasn't come out yet. Of course, their studio ended up getting bought out by Microsoft, if I understand it. But anyway, I pre-order stuff all the time, and it takes for some of the stuff takes forever to come out. And when it finally shows up at a doorstep, you know, or in the mail, I'm like, whoa, wait a minute. What the hell is this? You know, and it's almost like Christmas for me. So anyway, something that I had pre-ordered a little while back was the model from Eaglemoss. Now, I collect a lot of the Eaglemoss starships. I don't collect much else from Eaglemoss, though I do like what they're doing with the Batman vehicles and all that, and I do get those books, and those books that they release, which I also have the Star Trek ones, the Shipyards books. They will often come with a little, they'll come with a model of, one of the little die-cast vehicles, say from Batman or whatever. I will get those, but generally this is the only thing I ever get from Eaglemoss, even though I think Eaglemoss does great work across the board, and they really put out the only collectibles I more or less care about, which ironically are starships, maybe, figure busts, if you're into that sort of thing, where it's like a bust of Captain Kirk or Spock or, or Worf or something like that. Or they do, well, actually, I also do get Battlestar Galactica, but they also do comic book releases, and they do the book releases where it's like technical breakdowns of these ships. I mean, all the stuff that I've loved pretty much my entire life with my favorite franchises. So Eaglemoss, I mean, I recommend anything they put out there. It's great, but I don't get much from them. I did end up getting another thing that I had pre-ordered. I ended up getting the classic, the real Battlestar Galactica from 78, 79, and that is a gorgeous model. I don't know where, maybe I'll talk about that on a Zomia ONE Underground Q&A or something. But that is a stunning, stunning little model. But I did end up getting the model for V'ger. Now, V'ger, this just came out this month, April or maybe March, because it was about a month ago that I got it, I guess, or that it finally came in. It was like March 2019. And I mean, it's about 8 inches long. It is a good hunk of it is metal. It's not all plastic. And the amazing thing, I'll put a link to it in the show notes. The amazing thing for me, and the real reason I wanted this, And there's a story to tell around this, actually, okay? So the real reason I wanted this is because we never really get a great look at V'ger from Star Trek the Motion Picture, of course, which ironically we're going to talk about a little bit later when Robin and I do the review of some episodes of season 2 based upon a theory that somehow Star Trek Discovery is going to introduce maybe a Borg origin story or something, which I hope they don't do. But regardless, because there's an origin story that Gene Roddenberry theorized that the Borg are what created or what turned Voyager 6 into V'ger, right, in Star Trek the Motion Picture. But we never get a good look at this thing. And up until recently, there weren't even, Sid Mead, or Mead, as he would be called on set. Sid Mead, a lot of his works that had come out, concept artwork that he would do. I mean, there are a lot of concept artists for Star Trek the Motion Picture because Paramount was really wanting this to be their Star Wars, right? And I love this movie. I think this movie's fucking great, by the way. Actually, it's my favorite Star Trek movie of them all. Though on a certain day, I might tell you Star Trek 3, but Star Trek the Motion Picture is probably my favorite. So cerebral. It's beautiful. Anyway, I've talked about that many times on Sovryn Trek, so no need to get into that now. But the concept artwork available from that time wasn't so widely available. Now, they did bring on Ralph McQuarrie to do Star Trek Phase 2, which is the TV show that originally Star Trek the Motion Picture was going to be. And some of that, of course, ended up becoming what would get used for kind of the design of the Discovery in Star Trek Discovery, right? But Sid Mead was one of the main guys. There's another guy, I think his name is Kent McCall, which I think he just had a book come out. Point being, I have a Sid Mead art collection, but a lot of this stuff didn't come out until just recently. We never got to see all this concept artwork, okay, ever. And so we never really got to get a good look at V'ger. And there's something I'm going to admit to you here. And this is going to happen a couple times in this episode where I'm going to say something where I'm like, oh, wait, I didn't know that. Or yeah, of course I knew that. And say I kind of forgotten, which I don't know, maybe I need to get more sleep or something. But anyway, something I did not realize. Well, all right, let me finish up this train of thought. So I wanted the V'ger model because you never get a good look at V'ger. The best look we ever got at V'ger was, or at least we think we never get a good look at V'ger, not at the full ship, right? Because there's the cloud around the ship, and then there's the actual ship itself. And of course, then at the heart of that is the Voyager 6 probe, right? But we never got a good look at it. And I love Star Trek the Motion Picture. It's been, depending upon how you answer it, it's been my favorite movie my whole life. Okay, but I have a rule that you can't, your favorite movie can't be something that's part of a franchise or something like that. So usually I say Gladiator is my favorite movie. But in actuality, if I didn't have that franchise rule, I would say Star Trek the Motion Picture has been my favorite movie, and it would be my favorite movie, for all time. Anyway, for all of this time, and I can't imagine ever changing. So in 2001, we finally got somewhat of a better look at V'ger. And in 2001, Paramount actually released or Viacom, I suppose, technically, but they released a director's cut overseen by Robert Wise, the director of Star Trek the Motion Picture, the brilliant Robert Wise, which he claimed that the original version of Star Trek the Motion Picture that ended up in theaters, he called that a rough cut. Okay, this is very similar, has a very similar history to another one of the great science fiction movies of all time, that being Ridley Scott's Blade Runner, which has 5 different versions of it out there, right? Star Trek the Motion Picture is little different. There are many different versions of this film. The director's cut, which strangely came out on DVD in 2001 in a double disc set, and it's stunning. The CGI they added in and everything on it was really, really great. Amazingly, that is yet to be released on Blu-ray. I don't exactly understand why. Maybe they're going to do it in 4K. I don't know. But I find that to be very strange that they've yet to do that because it was so well done. I'm sure it's a rights issue of some kind. But anyway, in the director's cut, at the end, the whole big finale that occurs and V'ger doesn't explode, but it kind of bursts, Now in the director's cut, you get to see an outline of the V'ger vessel. All right. And that is really the best look that we ever got at it. Up until Eaglemoss released their special edition V'ger model. And it's gorgeous. Like I said, the model is absolutely stunning. I did just get the magazine in also, because each of these collectible ships that Eagle Moss puts out comes with a little magazine, okay? And the magazines are almost better than the ships, because the magazines give you a lot of technical data that's not even in, like, the latest version of the Star Trek Encyclopedia, or it's not even on Memory Alpha, online. And for one, it's confirmed that V'ger, the vessel, just the vessel alone, not the cloud, the vessel is 300 million kilometers long. It's 2 AU, which there's a line in the motion picture, but I thought that the line in the motion picture said the cloud was like 32 AU in diameter or something like that. I don't think it was talking about the vessel, but whatever. Anyway. So AU, of course, astronomical units, right, which is the distance from Earth to the Sun, which is about 150 million kilometers. So anyway, this beautiful, now granted, the model isn't that big. The model's only 8 inches long, but it's 300 million kilometers. Now, the interesting thing that I learned while reading this guidebook or this little magazine that comes with the ship, and again, sadly, unfortunately, they seem to release the magazines for the ships much later than when the ship comes out. In fact, I'm a little annoyed by that, because I really wanted a lot of the technical details about the Enterprise. And I got the Enterprise model back last year when, from Discovery, the version of the Enterprise of the NCC 1701 from Discovery, and I still had yet to receive that magazine. Who knows what's behind that. So anyway, reading this magazine, I came to a realization that I can't believe I didn't know. Like I said, Star Trek the Motion Picture, my favorite movie. I don't know how I didn't realize this. I don't know how it didn't compute. I've even read the novel multiple times, and I'm sure, like the novel by Gene Roddenberry, which I think was actually ghost written by, what's that guy's name? Alan Dean Foster. I think ghost wrote it. But anyway, the novelization for Star Trek the Motion Picture, which is a great read, by the way. I know that it said this, but I thought maybe they just changed it for the movie, because there are differences between the book and the movie, of course, as there often is. But that whole time when you're spending a lot of these really beautiful, sweeping, almost dark scenes in Star Trek the Motion Picture, where it looks like the Enterprise is flying through V'ger, it's actually not flying through V'ger. It's, I thought it was just like going through this huge ship and all this different stuff. Not at all. It's flying around the vessel that is V'ger, the 300 million kilometer vessel. And that's why when you look at the model, you look at it and you go, oh yeah, I saw this part of it. I saw this part of it, but we never saw the whole ship. And so I don't think it was ever really clear to me that they were flying around the ship. It just never clicked. So now after reading the magazine and I look at it and I look at the concept artwork and everything, I'm like, oh fuck, they were flying around the outside of this thing. And now I totally get it. But I had no idea. One thing I wish they did, in fact, this was in talks, oh man, probably 15 years ago, maybe a little earlier, or maybe a little later than that. They were talking about releasing, and this is back when, I guess maybe it'd be almost 20 years ago. Now that I think of it, they were talking about doing a special cut of Star Trek the Motion Picture that would include the concept artwork. And they would actually hire the actors who would all have still been alive at the time, including, I think, DeForest Kelley. James Doohan was still alive and everything. They would have hired them to do the voices over dialogue playing while showing you the concept artwork, so that you'd end up with this 3-hour version of Star Trek the Motion Picture. Now, sadly, a lot of people, I think, are tasteless, and they would say, oh, that movie's already so boring, we can't possibly sit through an extra hour tacked onto that film. I would do it in a heartbeat. I wish that would exist. I wish that'd be a thing, but I bet that if we had that version of the film, a lot of things would have a lot more clarity in it. Right, including the fact that the Enterprise was flying alongside the vessel of V'ger, not through it, not like inside it. They're in the cloud, but not in the vessel, and I think maybe that's where the confusion came from. You let me know. You can email me, okay, bbs@sovryntech.com. You can email me and let me know if you thought the same thing, because it just suddenly clicked. But that's how mysterious the V'ger was, I think, for all this time, because we never got a really great look at it, and there was very little concept art available, at least in book format or in in a mainstream format, to look at it until really just the past few years, I think. So, and I mean, I had the making special for Star Trek: The Motion Picture book. There was a great book, I think it was by Suzanne Sackett. I had that. I mean, I had the Phase 2 book. I mean, I regularly buy these reference books. Yeah, and it just never clicked for me, and then suddenly it clicked. So interesting stuff. I also did get something else I had pre-ordered. In fact, there was a very interesting flub around this with Eagle Moss, where they were sending everybody models of the Enterprise F when actually they ordered the USS Bonaventure. Now, like I said, Enterprise F, which is from Star Trek Online. They accidentally sent me the Enterprise F, and I'm like, yeah, but I really want the USS Bonaventure, which is this like version. It's NCC 1000. It's this classic ship that looks like it's a cross between the Constitution class and the NX-01. It's really pretty. I finally got that in, but just like with V'ger and the Enterprise, I don't have the magazine for it yet, and I really, really want that magazine. But regardless, anyway, Eagle Moss is doing great work. In fact, they just released, or they just put up for pre-order, the 3 nacelle, or what they call the Galaxy X class, Enterprise D, Enterprise, ISS Enterprise D, I guess, from the, what is it, Mirror Broken, right? The great comic book run that Star Trek Next Generation has been on over the past year, whereas dealing with the Mirror Universe versions of all those characters, of the Next Generation characters. The Enterprise from that, which has the 3 nacelles, the big gun on the bottom, which just looks like the Enterprise from the Future of All Good Things. They have it with the proper paint job and everything, and I thought that just looks stunning. It's absolutely stunning. So it's the Terran version of that. Very excited to see what that ends up looking like, even though I do have the 3 nacelle version that they released before, that just didn't have the different paint job. But I'd like to even just get the magazine on that to get all the data behind it. But anyway, that's just something to open it up with, and that if you didn't know, now you know. And before we go to the review of Star Trek, of the past few episodes of Season 2 of Star Trek Discovery, I do want to let you in on a little more news. In fact, I'll put a link in the show notes for the trailer. But there was a deal that happened where the What You Leave Behind, or What We Left Behind, the Deep Space Nine documentary that's been in production. It was a Kickstarter. It's been in production for a couple of years at least now. And I was, over the past few months, I've been saying, well, I had the Blu-ray pre-ordered and it was supposed to ship end of 2018, but it's not. Some good news is that while I still don't have an update on when we're going to actually get our Blu-rays, because they did a deal, Ira Steven Burr, who has taken over production of this documentary, they made a deal with Shout Factory where it's going to get a theatrical release, and it's getting a fairly good sized theatrical release, in fact, that reached all the way to New Hampshire. So AMC theaters and some other theaters are going to get it, and it's going to be, I think, May 13th. It's a one night only affair. But usually, I mean, these kind of one night only plays of like comic book, say like animated comic book movies, or of documentaries or things like this, these are very commonplace in a lot of major cities in the US and around the world. But it's very rare that anything like this gets the kind of reach where it would even get into, West Bumfuck, New Hampshire, right? So I was really excited when I found out about it, and I already got tickets. So I am definitely going to go see this, even though I already paid for the Blu-ray. I kind of feel like, because I already laid down that money about a year ago for all this, that maybe, maybe you should give me a free movie ticket for this, but they didn't do so. But regardless, after I see it in theaters, there's going to be some kind of, if you go to the movies to go see it, I think there's supposed to be some kind of special roundtable that gets played in theaters that you can only see in theaters. We'll see how true that stays. And also you get a movie poster when you go. So there's some benefits, there's some bennies to going to see it in theaters. I will obviously do a review of it for the May. It'll actually be the May Sovryn Trek. In fact, it's really nice. Like, my whole life, so my birthday is May 12th, and my whole life there's always been some kind of great movie that drops like the weekend of May 12th, and like I always have my birthday movie, and I can't believe it, but my birthday movie this year is going to be a Star Trek documentary. I am not complaining for a second. So anyway, you get to look forward to that come next month, but you will have another Sovryn Trek to come out this month in April, where we will do there's going to be a season 2 overview. But before we get to a full-on season 2 overview, because it hasn't ended yet, why don't we go ahead? Let's get right into the review of the past few episodes with Rob and I, and then after that, we'll actually, I'll come back and I have a review of a comic book, that being Star Trek Discovery Captain Saru, a comic that came out in March of 2019. And we'll go over that and then we'll wrap this baby up. So we'll be right back with some more Sovryn Trek. Woo!
Beyond the moon,
fighters, wave after wave after wave,
lies a lone outpost in space.
Potentially dangerous alien technology was smuggled aboard this station.
Beyond the stars,
blood calls out for blood.
Lies a dream for universal peace.
One night you'll wake up and find our teeth at your throat.
Beyond imagination,
who would do this? Why?
Lies Babylon 5, the series.
Babylon 5 is available for download on your favorite torrent site. See it now to experience the greatest show in television history, Babylon 5.
So the listeners want it and they got it. I am not reviewing, once again, I am not reviewing the episodes of Discovery on my own. Originally, I was thinking I was going to, let's whatever, I'll do it mid-March or something like that, and we'll make that happen. But instead, kind of held off a bit, get in a more fuller picture of all the recent episodes of Star Trek Discovery. But to review them with me is none other than my co-host and dearest friend, that being Robin Freebeard. Robin, man, welcome to Sovryn Trek. I love the new name.
Haha, beam me up.
Yeah, yes, absolutely. So, and you've pretty much got a Starfleet uniform on right now, even though nobody else is going to be able to see the video. But I love it. So we have a lot of episodes to review for we're in the middle run here, getting very close to the end. Only a couple as this gets released, this episode of Sovryn Trek gets released. We only have a couple episodes left, really, to season 2, because it's just a 14 episode season. But we have quite a nice mid run to talk about, and there's a lot to break down here. So I want to go ahead and get right into it. And then maybe get into an overall, because I think your opinion, Rob, and mine might differ on how we're feeling about Discovery right now.
Right.
Actually, that might be good to kind of open up with, and then maybe see where we sit with each of these episodes. But I'm feeling a little down about the show. I'm not getting I still feel like I'm getting these constant, I feel like I'm getting a bunch of cool moments, quote unquote cool. They're meant to be cool or meant to be deep and emotional. But I'm not getting, and like somewhere in there's like these little stories that I'm just not being told. But if they were there, I feel like the emotional moments and all the big moments and deep moments would have more payoff, all of which we'll break down in these episodes. So I'm feeling a little down about it. Like everything just feels rushed, not getting a chance to breathe. And we've talked about this before with Discovery.
Right.
But yeah, there's that. And then there's some other things that maybe we'll talk about. There are things to love, no doubt. But we'll get into it maybe as we talk about these episodes. But how are you feeling about Star Trek Discovery season 2 right now, Rob? We're just 2 episodes away really from the end of the season.
Yeah, I really understand where you're coming from, and in a lot of great ways, I can definitely empathize with that. But overall, I'm still really enjoying the season. For me, some of the big standout things, like Anson Mount is just killing it as Captain Pike.
I agree with that.
So much so that I'm really kind of sad that this is going to be, he's only going to be on for this one season, and I really feel that if CBS is smart, they'll give him his own show.
Yeah, I would concur. And I say, why the hell not? As far as Pike is the standout of this season, no doubt there. While they're saying, oh, we're going to do this show, we're going to do this animated series, we're going to do this. You might as well just say, yeah, we signed Anson Mount for whatever deal, let's let him do it. Right. It is important to note that, yes, his contract does end for season 2 of Discovery with CBS, as to where, just to bring it up, Ethan Peck as Spock his contract is not over with season 2, which does make you wonder what's going to happen there. But we don't have any clear signs of what that would be, at least in the episodes that we've seen so far for season 2. I mean, what is there anything else stand out that you're really loving with this, Rob?
I mean, I do think that the characterization and although like, you know, there's some exceptions to it where it can be kind of abrupt, like in Project Daedalus, but like the development of the characters, in my opinion, has been really good.
Well, where's Tilly though? Like, is Tilly even really been around?
You know, that's I kind of felt like she got a lot of attention, you know, in the first half of the season.
Yeah.
And definitely she's not getting as much now, other than when she's just kind of like, you know, being odd and quirky, which is awesome and I love it. But yeah, they kind of feel like they did her bit, you know, with the mycelial network stuff. Yep. And then she was kind of done for the season. So yeah, I definitely agree with you there. But you know, that at the same time, you know, like I would enjoy to see them give, you know, more attention to some of the other characters. You know, like it'd be great to maybe get, you know, more about Detmer or
sure,
you know, some of the was it Oshokun?
Oshokun, yeah.
Oshokun, yeah.
Yep.
It'd be great to get some attention to them too. But you know, I feel that will probably come in time. Maybe not this season, maybe next season.
Yeah. I mean, and the concentration on Hugh Culber has been pretty solid. Even
yes,
I mean, they're you're right. They have spent a lot of time, especially in the episodes, the run that we're talking about in this episode of Sovryn Trek, which is from Light and Shadows, which I think is the 7th episode of season 2. All the way to, ironically, Through the Valley of Shadows, which is the 12th episode of season 2. It's interesting that there has been kind of the two standouts, fan standouts, I think, or people that the fans have gone nuts over for Discovery, that being Tilly and Saru, have been on the back burner, I think, for these few episodes. I mean, they're kind of there, but like, there is more concentration on some other characterization and everything that's going on. And there's so much that's fucking going on, which kind of points at my, I would love to spend more time with the characters as well. Go ahead.
But you brought up a great point with, you know, like Hugh Culber and Paul Stamets. I mean, like, you know, just some great character development there and some just top-notch acting as well. I mean, Anthony Rapp and Wilson Cruz are just a fantastic job playing these characters. And there's some really high drama there.
Yeah, Wilson Cruz has been really. We'll break into it in some of these episodes, but there's a few points where I was like, oh, he's fucking awesome. Like, I'm so glad they didn't leave him dead, because I think a lot of people were complaining that, oh, what, they're just bringing this guy back to life now and blah blah blah. I mean, I think a lot of characters that maybe have died, you know, I mean, this seems to be almost an MO with Discovery, is that you do get your actors back, right? Like, I mean, you have you know. Michelle Yeoh comes back, right? Of course, as the Empress, but you know, she still comes back to be on the show. And I think we're even eventually going to get Captain Lorca back, but it'll be the Prime Lorca.
That'd be interesting.
That is in which from the book Desperate Measures, I think, is you know, that he's like in the mirror universe, so maybe he'll come back over. We'll see. So
and the other thing I remember we talked about last time when we were like, where's Jet Reno?
Yeah,
and she does show up in one of these episodes, and it's really short, but it's a great scene. And you know, she goes to Culber and says, "Hey, you know, kind of like, get your shit together, man."
Yeah, right. Yeah, that was really cool. So we'll break into that. But yeah, okay. So we're a little bit at odds over like how good we're feeling about this show right now. But
I always come back to something that you've said, Brian, is that, you know, Star Trek is still better than 90% of anything that's on television, no matter what kind of Star Trek it is.
Oh, absolutely. And actually that's still true for Discovery. Like, I mean, thank you for quoting. Yeah, you're right. Like any hour, like there's bad episodes of Star Trek, but any hour of Star Trek is infinitely better than anything else on TV, or just about anything else on TV. So anyway, that's a fair point to bring up. So why don't we go ahead talking about these episodes, talking about these hours, and these episodes have been on the longer side. I mean, in general, they've been pushing past the 50-minute mark. Some of them have been under 50, but you know, because they're on CBS All Access, they don't really have time constraints. But opening it up with Light and Shadows, this is the aftermath of basically everything that happened on Kaminar, where, you know, the Saru's people have now gotten rid of their fear and all this. We talked about it in the last episode of Sovryn Trek. And we continue the pun intended search for Spock with this. And and we finally, at the end of this one, if I remember correctly, I was going to say if memory serves, but then that's the that's the title of the next episode. We finally get Ethan Peck at towards the end of this, and this is a very interesting episode for quite a few reasons. But basically, you get where Burnham is going after trying to find Spock, and spoiler alerts ahoy, folks, but she finds him with her mother, in fact hidden in a cave on Vulcan itself, basically surrounded by this new concept called Katra stones, that of course Katra is the Vulcan quote-unquote soul.
That's not true.
What's that?
Those have been around before.
Oh, they have. Tell me about
this.
Is this
Star
from,
Trek
like,
Enterprise.
Enterprise?
From Enterprise. Remember when they actually find
they had the T'Pau storyline,
right, where he takes over Archer.
Where Surak ends up in
Surak ends up in Archer.
Katra.
Because this is Katra stored in Katra stone.
Oh, maybe. Well, so the Katra stones in this get used to like block Vulcan telepathic abilities. I for some reason, I guess maybe I didn't put that together with what was done in Enterprise, but that's fair to bring up. Those are great episodes, by the way. That whole Vulcan's Forge that was a book series, but it took place in the Forge. But that was a nice little trilogy of episodes there. Okay. So Spock is actually hidden right on Vulcan. A very interesting thing comes into play that we find out Spock is basically dyslexic. And I mean, there's a different term for it for Vulcans, but he has that. He got it from his mother's side, from his human side, basically. And he is in this cave effectively nuts. Probably I think more of that comes into play. Well, no, it's in that episode, but we don't really get like rational, shall we say, Spock until the following episode. But basically, Amanda is hiding her son. She doesn't believe that he has engaged in murder, and she's not going to let anybody take him away. There is a pretty great sequence in this where Sarek, Spock's father, of course, Michael Burnham finds Spock's, and Sarek comes in and says, you can't do this, and basically reads Amanda the husband act, more or less, and Amanda just pushes back and more or less says, fuck you, husband, like I'm you're not going to tell me what to do, which was a pretty cool moment in and of itself. But I guess maybe the big thing to take out for this, the reveal of Spock I thought was fine within it, but how do you feel about Spock being dyslexic?
Yeah, it's kind of odd, isn't it?
Yeah,
I mean, it doesn't really fit with the rest of what we know about Spock.
Yeah, I mean, because he's constantly billed as directly in phrases as being like just one of the most brilliant people in the galaxy.
And that's not to say that dyslexic people can't be totally brilliant and genius.
I agree. Yeah, I agree completely. Actually, my oldest brother is dyslexic, and he in what he specializes in is an absolute genius. So yeah, I agree with you.
Yeah, but it did kind of like this is one place where I'm probably going to agree with you, and that it does feel like they just kind of dropped something on us to be, hey, wow, we learned something new about Spock.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas, I mean, it's almost like they came up with this idea to make Spock dyslexic and then wrote it into the show, rather than writing the story and then, coming up with that as an idea as to why he's processing information weirdly like this.
Yeah, and kind of the purpose to there's sort of two purposes for storyline purposes for him being dyslexic. One is that he's writing these numbers on the wall in this cave on Vulcan, and you find out that it's actually the coordinates for Talos 4. But nobody can figure that out because it's all backwards, until Michael Burnham thinks, oh, wait, he's dyslexic. Maybe he was writing it backwards. And then you find out, and we end up going to Talos 4, which we're going to talk about quite a bit.
Is that a thing with dyslexia?
Like, well, that's the concept is right. I mean, you wouldn't exactly do that,
Right. I mean, I always thought dyslexia was like things got jumbled up, not that everything's backwards.
Exactly. No, you're exactly right. And again, like I said, I mean, I have personal experience with this.
Right.
And yeah, I mean, it's just like you have a hard time reading like the newspaper because everything's jumbled. It's not because you're reading it like it's Hebrew and you're reading it backwards or something.
Right.
Which your point there speaks to something that I want to say about it. But the other narrative purpose of this is that's why supposedly Spock could understand the time shifts happening, was because his brain goes in kind of both directions. And well, that's going to get into a larger conversation around time that I think Discovery gets very, very weird about. But regardless, this really felt like, and look, I am so on board with being inclusive and having characters that represent different minorities, mental states, whatever else, for the for humanity. I think that's wonderful to start doing that, and it can be done in very respectful ways. I think it's an interesting way to do it with Spock, in a certain sense, but then in the other sense, it's like, there's really no good reason for this. Like, this did just feel like almost just a corporate decision to say, okay, we need a dyslexic character on the show. Let's
exactly. It's like we need more, we have Tilly, but we need more neurodiversity in the show. So we're going to include a dyslexic character. It's like I said, it's almost like they did this backwards.
Yeah. It's very, I mean, it's a retcon, certainly, no matter how you look at it, but regardless, it just doesn't, I don't know, it doesn't work. And I don't feel that it adds any depth to Spock as a character. Like, I really don't. Yeah.
No, I completely agree with you there.
Yeah. I don't think anybody's going to look back and, wow, he's such a great character because he's dyslexic. And it's like, no.
This insight doesn't inform us on anything that we know about Spock from, the original series or the movies or anything else. I mean, we can't go back and look at all that stuff, and reinterpret it because he's dyslexic. It doesn't add anything to the character.
Yeah. I mean, it would have been interesting if there's a little more attachment to certain events that like we could think of where, oh, that's because Spock is, has this mental, or has this, again, neurodiversity, but there's nothing like that. It just doesn't, it seems terribly out of place, and I get why they did it, but I don't exactly I just think it was the wrong move, and it's not really adding any richness to the character, to the show. Like, even the narrative reasons for it don't make any sense, in my opinion, or at the very least, dyslexia, like you said, doesn't even work that way.
Right.
But that's kind of been a story with Discovery, is that there's a lot of things they try to implement and they do it fairly poorly. That's not how things work.
It is. I mean, I have to agree with you. It's kind of half-assed.
Yeah.
Especially since they can't even get it right.
Right. Exactly. So anyway, this episode does have a pretty great moment where I believe maybe it's the second episode, Light and Shadows. And if memory serves, those two episodes kind of run into each other.
Yeah. I mean, I like Light and Shadows, probably one of my least favorite.
Yeah.
Episodes we're going to do. Just because I'm not a really huge fan of like time loop stuff where stuff's repeating.
Right.
Like one of the episodes I hated the most from The Next Generation is the one where what's the guy who plays Frasier?
Cause and Effect was the name of the episode.
Effect. Yeah. It crashes into the Enterprise, and they just play it over and over. I hated that episode so much.
Yeah, where the Bozeman keeps showing up.
Right.
Yeah, agreed. Yeah. No, I hear you on that. And actually, like that's an overall gist that's also been annoying me, is like this time war, which is basically what we find out we're in, where Control, which I've talked about in past, or brought it up in the past on Sovryn Trek, this AI that's running Section 31 and everything is trying to become conscious, and it knows in the future it can be, but certain events have to happen for it to get to that. We're going to talk more about that in a minute. But like this idea of something from like even particularly the 28th century or whatever, and going back in time and there's being this kind of temporal Cold War. I mean, Enterprise already did this,
and that's kind of a weird thing too. With doesn't it seem to you that Control is already conscious? I mean, if it's
seems
taking
very
over,
conscious.
it's taking over other, humans and effectively fooling everybody that they are, still in themselves.
Right.
I mean, it would take a conscious being to do that, I would think.
Yeah. No, I agree with you.
I think it would have been better served if they said, Control is seeking to be not just conscious, but like super aware or omniscient or something.
Some kind of godlike being.
Right, exactly. That would seem like, more in fitting with what's going on here than just saying it's conscious, because it already seems conscious.
Yeah. No, I agree. I wanted to, there's definitely a bigger conversation to have around Control as well, as we break into this. But yeah, why don't we skip right to If Memory Serves, which is the episode after this, which we end up, basically Burnham finds out Spock is trying to get to Talos 4. That's the gist. And she has to break him out of a Section 31 ship, which, by the way, what do you think of the Section 31 ships?
They're pretty cool.
Yeah.
They almost kind of, in a way that, like, when they fold up, it almost reminds me like the Oberth class that we saw first. And
yep.
Search for Spock.
Right. Yeah, good call. Because that's what we're on, the Search for Spock.
Right.
Yeah. No, you're right. It does look like that. I thought the bridge was a really cool design. Especially since, go ahead.
I thought about that too, and I was like, oh, that's a Cardassian design.
Yeah, that's a great point to bring up too. It does feel Cardassian. Also, in Star Trek Into Darkness, the J.J. Abrams movie, of course, in that you have the Vengeance, the USS Vengeance, which is a Section 31 ship. Of course, it's fucking huge, and it's meant to be like a dark Enterprise. In the concept art for that, the original idea they wanted for the bridge of that was for it to be this giant open, like, kind of command and control bridge, and where like one guy can stand at the top and kind of look down at everybody. And that's basically what they implemented. I mean, of course, Alex Kurtzman was involved with Into Darkness, but that's basically what they did with these bridges. And I thought that was kind of cool. The other interesting thing, there's one of these episodes, I forget which one it is. It might even be this one, but where you see a Section 31 guy going by on a wheelchair. And I was like, I mean, talk about inclusiveness, but I'm like, wait a minute, Section 31's hiring guys in wheelchairs? All right, well, that's cool. I mean, it was like just totally off to the right. And like, okay, do it that way. Like, that's cool.
Yeah.
Like, I don't mind that at all. So, well, anyway, but also they have those really cool phasers in this too, where like it kind of pops out and everything. I like where the barrel of it sort of pops out. I thought that was slick.
Really quick, that intro sequence on this episode, like the previously on Star Trek, and they actually go back and show clips from the original series. That was brilliant. I loved that a lot.
Yeah, so that was on If Memory Serves. I couldn't believe that they opened up with that. I was stunned.
Me too.
When they go right there and they are showing, no problem, Jeffrey Hunter as Captain Pike. There it is. And I mean, they made it. That was probably the clearest statement we've gotten that this is the prime timeline. Because here you go. Right. This is happening now, or this happened and so on. And it's the Jeffrey Hunter version that we all know and love. I thought that was very slick. And the transition from Jeffrey Hunter's Pike to Anson Mount on the bridge was also very well done. And you kind of got like, all right, yeah, they look alike. Like, or they have there's a resemblance,
right?
Which was nice.
Yeah. And if anything, I think that whole thing just kind of like really just reinforced to me that, sometimes they make some missteps with the show, but the people behind it really do love Star Trek.
Yeah. No, I agree with that. I mean, there might be weird things happening in the editing room or something, but yeah, no, I agree with you there. So this episode takes place largely on Talos 4, with Burnham and Spock encountering the Talosians, which again, we haven't seen since The Cage from, was that 1964, I think. And they look a little different, but the singing plants are there from The Cage.
Right.
Like, I mean, I thought they did a very nice job of bringing the Talosians, kind of back. and what they would look like. I had no problem with any little bit of differences that they might have had. I thought that worked. I was shocked, and also, I was pleasantly surprised, and I was amazed they were able to keep this secret. But to get the character of Vina back, was amazing.
Right. I loved that so much. And the actress they cast to play her, excellent.
Yeah. I mean, and they didn't spare any, like, I could see where for a modern audience, maybe they wouldn't want her to be wearing the pumps and the, and the slinky dress, but no, she was wearing a slinky dress and the pumps.
Yeah.
I was like, okay, cool. And yeah, that was very well done overall. I think the presentation of the Telosians. Now they ask to fix Spock's mind, which is what they do. To do this, they ask for, in return, we want to experience what the hell happened between you and Spock. That being Michael Burnham and Spock. I feel like that's kind of a cheap narrative way of finding out what that was. I didn't really I just thought it was cheap. I didn't think it worked. And also the reasoning behind why Spock and Burnham weren't talking to each other for years, or whatever the time frame was. I don't know. It didn't really do much for me. Basically, like, she insulted him as a child. I mean, that's not to say that isn't traumatic in real life. It most certainly is. But she insulted him as a child and said, I don't actually, what was really interesting, what did she call him?
A freak.
Yeah, a freak, but it was like she said half-breed or something like that, which I forget what the exact line was, but it's the exact thing that Kirk called Spock when he's trying to get him angry in This Side of Paradise, which I thought was really slick.
I didn't notice that.
Yeah, when I think it was half-breed was the specific word used, and I was like, oh, that reminds me of This Side of Paradise, which is one of my favorite episodes of the original series. So, but basically, yeah, that's what happens and she runs away and says she doesn't want to teach him about empathy and love and all this stuff, and it really disturbs Spock to a level. I mean, how do you feel about this? Like, as far as the reasons? I mean, I was expecting, I don't know what you were expecting. I was expecting Spock to be in love with Burnham, and she turned him down in some really crazy way. I don't know. I mean, what did you think about that?
I think I felt that there was a bit of an element there in that they didn't, explicitly say that, he was in love with her.
Right.
But I think that was kind of hinted at least to me. That's the kind of the impression. And let's be honest here. It was a bit more than just an insult. I mean,
yeah, it was.
She was being intentionally very cruel, granted for what she thought was for noble reasons, but she intended to hurt him.
Yeah.
And she did.
Yeah, I guess
so I can buy it.
Yeah, it works. It seems like the safest option. And just the severity with which she would talk about it, though. I mean, but this kind of speaks to Sonequa Martin Green's acting. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with her acting. I should say the direction is that she has to be, and this has been annoying me actually, all of these episodes and throughout season 2. I miss the emotionless. I miss the Vulcan Michael Burnham. She is way too, I just feel like she's way too emotional. And go ahead.
I get it though, because shit, she's got a fucked up life.
Yeah, you see, the thing is,
this is intense shit.
Well, true, but I think I would be doubling down on my logic at that point. I don't know. I feel like we got throughout this season. I feel like Michael Burnham is a completely different character.
I think. Well, I don't know that she's. She's changed. She's definitely changed. But I feel like she's encountered a lot of situations where she might feel that logic has failed her.
Yeah. You're totally right. She's gone through a ton of shit. even the relationship with Ash Tyler and all that is enough to drive anybody nuts. I can hear that. And
so far as with the intensity of the feelings between Spock and Burnham, if somebody has some familiarity with like unprocessed trauma, if you don't like, if they did not talk about what happened, if they never processed their feelings after that event happened in their childhood, and they just both carried it with them throughout their entire adult lives, then I could see how that it could, give rise to that kind of animosity.
Yeah. Yeah, I hear that. Again, it's not like it was necessarily a bad move. It's just it didn't seem, just based on the reaction, it seemed like a very safe option to go with. And I was expecting, I didn't know what I was expecting, but I was expecting something really severe. And I mean, not to say it's not, I'm not downplaying that, but
right.
I was expecting something different. I did like the presentation.
You were expecting some sort of earth-shattering revelation that would like inform us more about their relationship with one another. Which, granted, we didn't. I will agree with you. It probably wasn't as big as a payoff as most people were expecting, and I can see that.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing is we're 7 episodes deep. And actually 8, and we're finally getting Spock. Like,
and that just might be. I think a lot of that is probably due to the fact that they built it up too much. They spent too much time building it up.
Yeah. No, that's it. I think you actually that is again a number one complaint of mine with the show in its entirety, not just season 2, is the timing is all way off.
Right.
I mean, like either things are going too fast or things are getting ignored or whatever. There's timing issues here across the board. So that makes sense. I did like the way that where they were like shifting between the child actors and the adult actors when they were like playing out the actual event that happened between Spock and Burnham as children. I thought that was really, actually psychologically accurate in a very real way. So I like that part, but it just felt very safe. But how did you feel about the Talosians? Did you think that worked?
Yeah. And you brought up something about how like you didn't think that the Talosians wanting to know about Spock and Michael Burnham's history was like really kind of a logical reason for them to want. I kind of think that they weren't being entirely upfront. I think they used that as a backdoor to get the information what they were really looking for, which was Michael Burnham's time travel history.
Oh, okay. Yeah. There might be some, or even just to know more about Pike, maybe. Or
yeah.
Okay. All right. So there might be ulterior motive here that we're just not aware
I
of
definitely
yet.
got the sense that they weren't being entirely upfront with either one of them.
Okay. No, I hope that that's the case because I'd buy that then. Like then that would click. Very interesting. Okay. All right. But overall, like you didn't have a problem with the look of the Talosians or anything like that.
No, I mean at this point we expect things to have an updated look. I mean we're used to it. Like kind of like after the shock of how the Klingons looked in the first season, I'm just kind of like I've had to accept that they're going to change things and they're going to update things to look a little bit more quote unquote modern.
Yeah. So now we also start to get in this episode, and it plays into the next episode, which is Project Daedalus. We start to get a funny Spock. And I don't mean like Spock has had his moments of humor. Sometimes they were intentional. Sometimes they were not. Like, the end of Star Trek 6, if I were human, I believe my response would be go to hell if I were human, like now that's fucking hilarious. And it was I laugh every time it drops. But we get a very intentionally humorous Spock, a Spock that is making jokes. How do you feel about this? Because in fact, he's smiling at the end of this episode, but then we also, we get the crack jokes in the next episode about how, I like science, or no, when the apparitions basically of that the Talosians are putting onto the Section 31 ship, Michael says, "Say goodbye, Spock," and Spock says, "Goodbye, Spock."
Right.
How did you feel about the jokes? Go ahead.
It's interesting that this happens around the stuff with the Talosians because in the cage originally we see Spock smiling.
He does smile in that, yeah in
that episode. I am kind of hacking this up to like this is immature Spock.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and I'm sure you probably don't have like, you know, a very good opinion, and I can see that, but like, yeah, I'm hacking this up to Spock being very immature at this point. This is a very young Spock.
Yeah, like I can buy that, and I can actually appreciate that. Yeah, he is younger, and he might be a little more in touch because of the mental break that he went through, you know, with some of his emotions and everything. I mean, he even smiles in, which is in the future from this episode, where no man has gone before, you know, where he says, "Ah, yes, one of your Earth emotions," you know, while he's playing chess with Captain Kirk. I mean, the real reason behind that, of course, is because the character hadn't been totally fleshed out yet. But regardless, you do have, you know, yeah, I can accept that. The thing is, I feel like the jokes they don't work. Like that, the whole "I like science," that just sounded so much like a tweet.
Yeah,
that I want to like bang my head against the wall.
They kind of did that before. Remember with Tilly and Stamets when they were dealing with the gravity rocks over there. Were like, this is the power of science, math people.
Or this is math people. Yeah,
this is the power of math. Yeah, I mean, like, and that didn't play really well with me either. Here again, you're right. It sounded like a tweet.
Yeah.
I wonder if that's where, like, you know, these people are getting their ideas from.
Wait, what's something cool that people said on Twitter today?
Right.
Not that it's even cool, but yeah.
Exactly. It's like you can almost see the hashtag floating in the air.
Right. Yeah. So, I mean, like, I'm fine with Spock cracking jokes. Again, it can be done. It's been done. But like actually even Zachary Quinto did a great job with Spock's humor, you know, like in Star Trek Beyond, where he's like, I would not define this as horse shit, you know, and I mean, it can work, but I'm not feeling the humor. I mean, Ethan, all right, well, let me ask this. This is the
humor. I agree with you. The humor is not great.
Yeah.
It is not my favorite part about Spock in this time period.
Sure.
But here again, you know, I mean, like I said, the way I rationalized it, he's being very, very immature, and a lot of times immature people are not very funny.
Yeah, well said. Life lesson there. So, but now, how do you feel about Ethan Peck's Spock? I mean, we've really had the time in these episodes to experience him as a rational person, you know, not as somebody who's just writing down numbers. I mean, what do you think of his performance?
I think his performance, like, overall, has been good. Like I said, the humor is kind of a missed thing, and I kind of put that more on the writers than I do the actor.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
But yeah, I think he's doing an okay job. He's not fantastic, not terrible.
Right. Yeah, it's serviceable. I agree.
Right.
I mean, I think I wish he'd get rid of the beard. There was a funny joke when Burnham makes fun of his beard. I thought that was done. Like, that was well done. Like, all right, that was good.
And he actually got a little butthurt.
yeah, his reaction was good too. Like that one worked. That was that.
Yeah.
In fact, that was in If Memory Serves. That was in that episode. It was funny. But I wish he'd drop the beard. But otherwise, I think he's got the look okay. The voice works.
Yeah.
He's no Zachary Quinto, and he's no Leonard Nimoy.
Yeah.
Who is
absolutely not. Like I said,
right.
he's not terrible, but he's not great.
Yeah. So yeah, I've felt good overall. Like, it's working.
Right.
Okay. He's standing in for Spock. All right, fine. Though sadly, I feel like Todd Hackleborn in Star Trek Continues did a better Spock. And Todd Hackleborn, I mean, he's an actor, but like, he's not like, you know, primetime.
Yeah.
You know, your guys on what to most people equate to fan films. I don't think they are, but most people equate to fan films shouldn't be doing a better job than the guy you're hiring in Discovery.
I know, but you know, there's always that seems to be an attitude in Hollywood that, you know, like, to do that sort of thing would be too much fan service. We can never give the fans everything they want.
Yeah. No, that's fair. And I still worry this falls under that 25% rule that we've talked about in past Sovryn Treks, and lots of content on Zomia ONE.
Yeah, which, you know what, like, I'm feeling less strongly about that than I have before, because some issues came up outside of Discovery where I was reminded that licensing for Star Trek properties have always been separated between all the shows and the movies. So essentially every show and every movie has its own license, separate from the greater Star Trek as a whole. because what happened is, I don't know if you remember the Star Trek trading card game from back in the 90s.
The original, or I mean, the Next Generation one?
Yeah, right. Well,
Yeah.
that started out as Next Generation. That's all they had the license for. And then later on, they were able to acquire the license for Deep Space Nine and Voyager, and they did those expansions. But they had to purchase those licenses separately. They didn't just get the whole Star Trek. All they got was Next Gen.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I'm that
so to a certain degree, it's always been that way.
Right. Okay. All right. That's something that I'm going to look deeper into, because you raise a great point about that. And I love playing that card game, by the way.
We'll have to do that sometime.
Oh, hell yeah. Yeah. I think I even have like,
cards.
You have your Next Gen cards?
Yeah, absolutely.
Shit. I think I have like PDFs of like all the cards, so I could print them out, I suppose.
Oh, yeah.
But,
yeah.
Right. But, oh, damn. Okay. Yeah, we will do that sometime. So, boy, there's stories to tell around that shit.
Right.
All right. Well, anyway, okay. So you raise a great point about that. But in any case, okay. So Spock is serviceable. We can kind of, go forward with that. So we can move into the Telosians work. That was, just for on nostalgia factor, I thought If Memory Serves was an episode that I appreciated, especially with that opening up with showing scenes directly from the cage was so well done. All right, so one and actually Pike. Well, anyway, Anson Mount was phenomenal in that episode.
Yeah, those scenes between Pike and Vina actually were really touching.
Yes. Yeah, and that's the strength of Anson Mount as an actor.
Yes,
because you believed when just in his eyes, you could see, whoa, and he really still had all these feelings for this woman.
Yeah,
which I thought was so cool. So I really like that episode overall. Okay, so let's go into Project Daedalus, the next episode on the list here, and then we still have 3 more to go after that. Project Daedalus. This is one. Here's another issue with Star Trek Discovery. Actually, this is an issue with much of entertainment today, which may still speak to that whole 25% thing, but that's another conversation for another time, is that it's all very predictable. Or it's not. Okay, wait, let me rephrase this. In my opinion, it's all very predictable unless they do something that you could have never known was going to happen, like that they never gave you any lead into, which I think is a good idea if you're doing serialized television. Give somebody a hint. Like you think of Babylon 5, where in the first season you encounter Babylon 4 and you have no idea what the hell some of these events happen with Babylon 4. 2 seasons later, you get payoff on that. You got to get, and it makes sense. It's not out of nowhere. There was buildup. But anyway, my point in getting with all that, with Project Daedalus, this is, well, let's just say it. This is the death of Arium, who ended up getting controlled by Control, kind of getting uploaded, from the future by this like probe that they encounter from the future. All crazy storylines. I mean, you couldn't possibly explain what happens in one episode of Discovery inside of 10 minutes, let alone really maybe 10 hours. But regardless, Arium has been fucking with things for a while. She's been taking down the spore drive when it was needed and so on. And this is all under the auspices of Control, which is the AI that works for Section 31 and apparently, or that controls Section 31 and has apparently been doing stuff in the future as well. So the episode opens up with Arium having some memories of what her life was before she became a cyborg, as well as memories and hanging out with Detmer and Tilly and so on. Okay. Now, as soon as they started showing all this stuff and they were opening up on Arium, a character that we saw so very little of overall throughout this entire show, I said to myself, they're going to kill her. They're going to kill her in this episode. Like there's no reason to go this deep unless she's dead inside of 40 minutes. And that's exactly what happened. We get this whole sequence where Discovery, like they find out that Control has more or less gone rogue and is working for itself. And they have to go to Section 31's headquarters to try and shut it down. Arium tries to, fuck with that. And basically, they end up Burnham. It's actually not Burnham. It's the other character that came with, that's the security chief right now under Pike on Discovery, who worked with him on the Enterprise, does the dirty deed. I'm just going to say this. I mean, and that's kind of the most important thing. We'll get into the big conversation around Control in a minute. I'm just going to say, I feel like this is one of those instances, like I was talking about earlier, where the payoff, an emotional moment is happening. Burnham, her eyes are like bugging out almost literally because she doesn't want to kill Ariam. We have no reason, and like the whole crew, there's a big death scene around Ariam and everything in this. Like there's a big funeral scene, very much reminiscent of Star Trek 2. I have no reason to feel for this character whatsoever. Like for Ariam, you know, and I have no understanding of why everybody feels so sad about Ariam, because they did no character development whatsoever up until this point. And if they just started doing these memories or her hanging out with Detmer and Oo and whoever else throughout the season, I think there could have, like, the emotional moment could have had some real purchase to it, and it didn't. And so it didn't really work for me. What is your opinion on all of that, Rob?
I'll straight up say it. I mean, this episode is cruel.
Cruel. Ooh.
Cruel. Both in terms of what happens in the episode and in the way the writing outside of, you know, in the meta sense.
Okay.
Because we get a glimpse of what could be a really, truly great character.
Yeah.
And then they rip her away from us.
Yeah.
And in that sense, I did feel something. I just felt like, just kind of like I was sad that, you know, we had, you know, somebody that could potentially be as awesome a character as Data on the Next Generation.
Yeah.
And we just, like I said, we get hints of that, and we have this whole storyline, you know, where, you know, you could have had this great, you know, ongoing thing with the character where she struggles with her former humanity and with what she is now, and the way that she, you know, processes emotion and deals with memory, and where she, you know, she has to go through this process where she uploads her memory into, you know, basically an offsite storage because she can't contain it all.
Yeah.
You know, I mean,
go ahead.
I mean, I think there was a lot of potential there, and they just ripped it away. And like I said, it's just like the episode feels very cruel, and Star Trek hasn't been this cruel since like season 3 of Voyager.
Yeah, where it's just like a depression fest.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, or like season 5 and 6 of Deep Space Nine, same.
Right. Yeah.
I you know, and so I want to hear more, but like this speaks to what I was kind of trying to say earlier, was that one of my problems with Discovery, this gets into the timing thing too, is that there are these things that happen that we see on the screen that are huge and like really, you know, they're supposed to be heartfelt and all that. And so you just, your brain wants to fill in the gaps, and you know that there are touching moments that happen between all the nonstop action that occurs in each episode, and we never get those really touching moments. Like the touching moments we could have had with Ariam, where, you know, really interesting things. Like I feel like there are whole comic books or novels that you could write just in between minutes of each episode, where we could get the payoff, or where we could get the purchase, I should say, where the payoff is where it's bought, like where it's earned, you know, where the emotional moment is earned, and it just doesn't come together. It doesn't.
Well, I mean, and you know, that's exactly what they were going for. They were going for a gut punch, and that was the only reason that they wanted. That was the only reason you could have for killing the character, really. Right. And it was too much too soon.
Yeah.
The more surprising thing would have been to not kill the character.
Yeah, right. Right. Yeah. Now, yeah, I mean, and even like, I don't know, it felt, because then they, you know, they killed off the Vulcan admiral woman, which I thought was like a loss. So like, oh, cool, we have a Vulcan female admiral. Like, let's let's run with that some more. This was you're right. This is a very depressing, very cruel episode in a lot of ways. Actually, it's very, like, it was almost gory. Like when they rip off the breathing apparatus.
Right.
Sadly, I keep forgetting the character's name. Their security officer.
Bodies floating in space, and then breaking apart, and, you know, I mean, yeah, it was it was a horror story in more way
Yeah.
than one.
Yeah, no, it's very, very brutal, very brutal. There were a lot of things. Yeah, and there were some other things I could get into, like, I don't know, some of the Section 31 technology and like how the Discovery somehow survived going through that minefield made no sense.
Say that's just what I was going to. How did you feel about that whole minefield sequence? Because I just, I wasn't into it.
No, I thought it was cheap. Another thing that didn't really have any payoff, and there's no way the Discovery should be looking that good at the end of that.
Right.
you know,
it should be looking like the Enterprise after Star Trek 2.
Yeah, exactly. Yes. Yeah, exactly. I mean, the thing should have looked beat to hell. And it's not, I mean, we're doing stuff in CGI now, folks. There's no reason you don't have to destroy the model or anything.
Right.
There's no reason you can't do that. I mean, there's a million times where Voyager or the NX-01, from Enterprise was shown like, just shy of the bulkheads literally falling apart completely. And for it not to be at that level was like, what the hell?
Although, I have to say, and I don't mean to keep bagging on Voyager, but they kind of did that in Voyager 2, where like the ship would get beat to hell, and then next week it'd show up and like it was like nothing happened.
True, but I hear you. But like at the same time, the Voyager didn't have a timing issue because like you kind of accepted or you had an understanding or the star dates would allow for it, which I want to comment on that. The star dates would allow for where you knew like weeks of time had passed.
Right. I just like the problem I always had with Voyager is like, they didn't have any space stations to go to like, repair and refit.
Yeah. No, that's fair. This is something you brought to mind something here. Like, where the hell are the captain's logs? Where the hell are the, like you're not, I can't even remember when I've heard a Stardate.
Right.
On the show.
That's a lost opportunity, especially with Pike right now.
Oh, and with a show where where so much happens in each episode, you have such the star logs are such or captain's logs or commander's logs if it comes from Burnham. I know she does a few throughout the show, but they are such a great narrative tool because you can say so much and you totally get it. You don't have to see it. The captain or the commander or whoever explains it, and you go forward. You don't need to have to see it. It's a powerful narrative tool. As someone that has written Star Trek fiction, like I love the captain's log. It saves the day.
Yeah, and I agree. But there's the thing that's off getting repeated, by both fans and people in Hollywood, and it's show don't tell.
Yeah,
I don't think that's always like 100% accurate. I think and here again, I think this is another instance of like internet culture invading Star Trek.
Yeah, no, you're right.
I think the captain's logs are just maybe a little bit too long form for your tweet generation.
Yeah, right. It's like, oh no, you can't talk for that. We can't have one person talking for that.
Right.
Yeah, I could see that. Well, anyway, so Arium dies here. Control ends up getting more or less injected into Leland, which is the head of Section 31, which a character that was, in my opinion, largely pointless. I don't really, it wasn't doing much for me.
No, that's probably one of my least favorite characters in this show. It's like he's just there taking up space. Yeah.
There's an interesting comment. Now, throughout all of this, so far of what we've talked about, a character that has really shined that we haven't talked about was Michelle Yeoh's Empress Georgiou or Agent Georgiou within Section 31. She, along with Anson Mount, I think has been like just a saving grace for this show, where every time she's on, she's always doing something cool.
Right.
I mean, and she's really like delivering, she's creating meaningful interactions with Burnham. Better than just about any other character on the show. She's keeping it real in a very interesting way, I think, and believable. Like where she just grounds everything throughout it. And if she wasn't in these episodes, I'd hate to think how much I would not be enjoying them because of a lot. I mean, and she even has great one-liners and lots of other things that. I don't know. Again, they just deliver. It just works. So anyway, this ends up with where we get to the episode, The Red Angel, where we finally get, because we find out about this Project Daedalus, which basically you find out is a time suit that Section 31 was developing that Burnham's parents were actually working on. And in the episode, The Red Angel, we finally get to find out who the Red Angel actually is. And we do find out about the time suit. At first, we're thinking it's actually Michael Burnham, but then we find out it's actually Michael Burnham's mother that is the Red Angel. And we do find out that the Red Angel apparently has nothing to do with the seven signals that are going throughout the galaxy. We find that out as well. I guess I want to ask you, Rob, how do you feel about the reveal of who the Red Angel actually is?
I felt like I was supposed to be surprised, but I wasn't at all.
Now that's interesting. Tell me about this.
Because for one thing, like Michael just didn't, for me, it didn't fit that Michael was going to be the Red Angel.
Okay.
Partly because, it was already being repeated so much as a quote unquote fan theory. And I never bought it to begin with. And the other part is that, when the Telosians are digging through Michael's memories, we get a sequence with her and her mother, don't we?
Yeah, I think there's a point.
Yeah. So they'd cast an actress to play her mother, and I kind of feel like they wouldn't have gone through that trouble unless they actually intended to do something with the character.
Yeah, but wouldn't you say from like the beginning of season 2, you would have, other than that one scene, like you mentioned, or at least one scene. Wouldn't you say it looked like they were really pointing at something else? They're actually going for, you had philosophical battles, right, between Pike and Burnham, that were about is there a God? Is there, or is there nothingness?
Right.
What is it? And go ahead.
There was a huge shift in sort of the tone and I feel like the direction of the show, from I would say like those first 6 episodes were like that's about when they changed writers too, wasn't it?
Yes.
I've had the feeling that there was something else intended, fairly early on. Because there was this whole thing, almost the show had this obsession with death, and afterlife, and that just got dropped.
Yeah. Like I have a hard time believing that, and I get the explanation that they give, but like that Michael Burnham's mother is like, she went back to World War III and dropped off a church on another planet, it was all supposedly to keep control from coming into existence. But like, it just doesn't seem like a good answer to me.
No. Not only that, it doesn't seem like a good answer because every time she time travels, she's inviting the possibility of disaster, of control coming through, her time fracture, or whatever you want to call it.
Right.
Because that happened before.
Right.
And that was the whole reason of them wanting to capture the Red Angel, was to stop future control from coming in from the future to the past.
Right.
And she keeps doing this.
Yeah. And again, to like make matters worse, like she's in her own log, she's saying, "Oh, I'm going to come back to you, baby," meaning her daughter, meaning Michael, and I'm going to, you and your dad, we'll make it right and all this stuff.
Yeah.
And like,
and then she shows up and
stuff 200 years previous, like your daughter's not even going to get born. You're not even going to get born if you do that,
Well, not only that, you have those logs, and then she comes back and she plays it totally cool.
Yeah, right.
It just completely, like, more shit. She has less emotion in the first half of that episode than Michael Burnham did in the first season.
Yeah. No, yeah. See, for me, I felt like it was an answer that was completely out of left field.
Yeah.
I imagine we're going to get something more about this at some point, but like, and I compare this, there's a movie with Tom Cruise called Vanilla Sky. A lot of people love this movie. It came out in the 90s, I think, maybe 99, something like that. I hate this movie because basically, spoiler alerts, folks, basically all this weird shit is happening to this guy. And at the end of it, you're wondering, wow, what is going on with him? What is the deal? And at the end, you find out that he's lucid dreaming. There are no real hints that that's what's happening in the film. Okay. Like it seems like an answer that just comes way out of left field, but it's too far out of left field. Like they just had to find something that you just wouldn't think of because otherwise you were going to guess it.
It's kind of like it's out of left field, but at the same time, it's not really a very novel idea.
Right. Yeah. Good point too.
I mean, like I think I really did feel like they are building up to something more novel and more original and more creative. And this was, it's out of left field, but it's definitely not a very creative choice.
Yeah, I mean, it's not as as interesting, even though I think there were writing issues around this as well. It wasn't as interesting a reveal as finding out that Lorca was a mirror, was a Terran.
Right.
Because you had a bunch of things that happened through those episodes successively where you could okay, I mean, they earned that.
Because, they dropped a lot of hints early on.
Yeah, and if you didn't catch
vision and all that kind of stuff,
Right. And if you didn't catch it, you could see what they dropped before and you're like, oh, no, they had that in mind. And this is one where they didn't do that at all. And I think that that's shitty. I didn't like that. I would have rather, one of the theories was that it was Spock. That would have been better. I didn't want that, but that would have been a much better answer.
Yeah. Well, it's the same thing with Arium. It's like you said, it's an unearned, emotional gut punch.
Right. Yes. Yeah. Unearned emotional gut punch. That is the phrase for the show. So yeah. So I didn't buy it. I thought the time suit was a cool idea. I thought it would have been awesome if they ran with it being something to do with red matter. Instead they come up with this genuine scientific. Go ahead.
I mean, who knows? Maybe that it still will. I mean, this is the thing that really bothers me is that they've been building up to the Red Angel and the Seven Signals, and they've been intertwined throughout the entire season, and now you come up with this episode and you're saying they have nothing to do with each other. That's what really bothers me. I don't buy that.
Yeah, well,
I think they were like, shit, we didn't come up with a good enough explanation, for these signals. Let's kick the can down the road a little bit and we'll come up with something later.
Yeah. That again, I don't feel like any of these, I don't like the answers. I don't think the payoffs are earned. I don't, none of it's just, it's not really working for me. But I mean, I recognize there's still some good things. And for you,
right,
the positives are outweighing the negatives still.
Yeah. Like I said, a lot of it comes down to me. I'm really enjoying the performances.
Sure.
Even if the story isn't up to the level where the performances are, the performances are definitely carrying this season for me in a big way.
Right. So, okay. Well, next episode is Perpetual Infinity, which we've kind of been already talking about because that's where we get the bulk of Michael Burnham's mother and, her interaction and why she's doing what she's doing and all this. You get confrontation between, you find out that Leland is being controlled by Control, and Ash Tyler figures this out. So does Georgiou. And there's a conflict that ensues there, conflict which has led to a very interesting theory that I want to get into with an overall conversation around Control. But I don't know how much more there is to say about the episode, specifically Perpetual Infinity, without talking about the following episode, the subsequent episode, which is Through the Valley of Shadows. But I want to say you find out that a lot of this all hinges around the concept of what's called a time crystal. Now, time crystals are actual things, in science. In fact, I've talked about them on Sovryn Tech, not on Sovryn Trek. I mean, they are a legitimate, not element, but they are a legitimate thing. But they don't work in the way that what Discovery's talking about, that these are completely different animals. And basically in the following episode, after Perpetual Infinity, which is Through the Valley of Shadows, we end up going to Boreth, which Boreth is a Klingon planet, a holy planet, basically. It's kind of the Klingon Mecca. And we've experienced Boreth before. I think it was the episode Rightful Heir, where Kales comes back, not Kalesh, by the way, Kales comes back. as a clone, of course. But Worf is there worshiping on Boreth and everything. In Deep Space Nine, I think there might be some visits or at least mentions of Boreth. You never hear anything about the idea that Boreth is some kind of haven for time crystals. And so you find out that the Klingons, the reason that they actually quote unquote killed Burnham's parents, are because they were wanting a time crystal, which I don't understand. If they have a whole planet full of time crystals on Boreth, why the fuck they want to go get, Section 31's time crystal?
I do have what might be an explanation for that.
Go for it.
This is just my theory. Section 31 stole it from the Klingons.
Oh, well,
and they wanted it back.
Maybe. Okay. That's a possibility. I could see that. Or maybe it's because, they might have explained to some degree that actually, like, the Klingons knew a time crystal was going to be activated and they wanted to put a stop to it or something, right. But I was under the impression, this gets so weird, because I was under the impression that the Klingons wanted it because it's the ultimate weapon. Like, having the ability to travel through time is such a powerful weapon. That's why they were looking for it. This is where narrative things get weird, because this also speaks to in my opinion, a major contradiction in Discovery. And that is that we see the log of when Burnham's mother escapes in the Red Angel suit to the future. Now in season 1, there's a point where Burnham is telling Ash Tyler, like, I saw or I heard the Klingons raping my mother. And then they just sat down and they killed her. They killed my dad. And then they just sat down and had dinner. That is not what we see in those logs. And they got to give us some explanation for what the hell happened there.
Well, and Leland also said, and granted he was being controlled by Control at the time he said this, but that he saw Burnham's mother's dead body for himself. And we don't know whether he was lying or not. But, what reason would he have to lie about that? It would be my question. Yeah.
So maybe there's there's something more here that we're going to get some kind of answer for. Maybe. But like, that's one of the things where having Burnham's mother be the Red Angel, it's another one where, like, no, you could have never guessed that, because we were very graphically told Michael Burnham's mother's fate. And so this might point to where you're saying they had a different idea for who the Red Angel was supposed to be. I think that's absolutely true.
Yeah.
There's no way that you make that line in season 1 and then you do this in season 2 and say that was the fucking plan. I don't believe it.
Yeah. I agree with you. Yeah. Absolutely. It's kind of sad.
Yeah. Again, maybe we have 2 episodes left. Maybe they're going to explain it somehow. I don't know.
The only thing I can think of is like, there's time travel involved. So there's definitely some funny business going on here, possibly with that, where, maybe people are remembering things as they were supposed to happen, but didn't.
Right.
Understand? Like, maybe the Klingons did come in and rape and brutally murder, her mother in another timeline, and maybe that's what Michael Burnham remembers.
I'll tell you, if they're going to say it's the Mandela effect, like, I'm going to shit myself. Like, I'm going to, if Alex Kurtzman comes out and says, "Oh, it's the Mandela effect," I'm going to be like, fuck you. Like,
yeah,
no,
no,
that's not even bad science. It's just bad everything. Like,
yes,
that would be horrible. Oh, I hope they don't pull that kind of shit.
Yeah. But that's like that's I can't think of any other reason.
Yeah.
Why she would remember things differently, other than, like I said, time travel, funny business.
Yeah. Now I want to talk about, so in the episode, the last episode that we're really talking about here, which is Through the Valley of Shadows. There's a storyline to be had, actually, that I think we'll get into this between Culber and Stamets that I think is interesting. But aside from Pike going there and what happens there, I want to talk about that because Pike ends up going down to Borth. They want to get their hands on a time crystal to try and do whatever they have to do against Control. Okay, again, a lot of this, like the narrative is going so quickly, it's hard to keep track of what the fuck they're even trying to do. What did you think of the presentation of Boreth, the inclusion of the time crystals there? Not related to Pike, but just in general, because really we find out that Ash Tyler and Chancellor Laurel's child, like he's already grown up now. Like time operates different on Boreth. I mean, give me the breakdown on Boreth.
Well, first of all, like just on presentation, I really did not enjoy the location they chose to represent this. It looked too human.
Sure.
Okay. I mean, it looked like a church. Yeah. Literally, like a human church. And it just kind of, it didn't look Klingon at all. And I didn't like it one bit. Now later when they go further into the temple, you know, and we see that bridge and then, you know, there's lava everywhere. That looked more Klingon. In the time crystal cave, that looked possibly more Klingon. But yeah, the initial location on Borth was a terrible choice, in my opinion.
Yeah, I could agree with that. Felt a little too Lord of the Rings. I was, you know, as to where the original, what we saw of Boreth was basically a matte painting. And then they were on the set of, was it like Stage 6, which they called Planet Hell back in the Next Generation days, right. where they would put all this stuff and there was like snow everywhere. Yeah, I mean, you really didn't get much of any of that with the presentation of Boreth. I mean, how do you feel about like the whole idea of, you know, the Klingons like protecting these time crystals? I mean, what do you think about that?
Well, I mean, I'll be honest with you, I was not a big fan of the whole time crystal idea to begin with.
Right.
I know you say the real thing, but I'm sorry, dumb name.
Oh, I agree. No, I agree with you on that.
You know,
yeah. I mean, and these aren't. Go ahead.
Yeah, come up with some weird technobabble name for it, but time crystal, you know,
right? Like chrononomium or something like that. You know,
right. Yes, exactly. Yeah. It kind of, and people have been getting lazy with names in science fiction in general lately. I'm thinking like the episode 8 of Star Wars, the super mega star destroyer or whatever they call it.
Right.
Stupid freaking name.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, come on, people, like, you know, go back to your roots, come up with some better names.
Yeah, absolutely. I this is something that, like, honestly, I think Klingons would find time travel to be dishonorable. Like, I think they would, like, you're going to rewrite the history of Sto-vo-kor, you know, fuck you.
Right. Well, I mean, Laurel does kind of say that to it. Like, they initially did think it was going to be like this great weapon, but, you know, they found out it was more trouble than it's worth. And it was something that they had to basically protect and guard, you know, the rest of the universe against. Yeah. But you see, like, I think the Klingons I remember would have blown up Boreth, you know, like they would have said, well, we're just, these are just like they're gods. Like these time crystals are too much trouble. That would work if it wasn't for Kahless. Sorry. Oh yeah. Right. Yeah. No. Yeah, that's a good point. Right. So they had to keep Boreth there so that Kahless could come back. Oh boy. Yeah, I mean, I think they would have gone on a holy crusade like they did with the Tribbles. You know, I don't. It's hard to believe they'd let those things stand. Yeah. Well, anyway, or you know, it could be too that, you know, they realized that if they tried to destroy the things, they would end up creating an even bigger disaster than them getting out. Like, yeah, maybe they figured that out. Yeah, I could see that. That's a possibility too. Sure, fair. Yeah. So, you know, but like the idea that time works differently there and people get older and like their son was already grown up. Yeah. I did not like what they did with Laurel and Voke's son. I was actually hopeful they were going to go have that be the albino. I know. Well, yeah, that was going on for a long time. I remember seeing that theory, and that's certainly a better idea than what they did with the character. Yeah, agreed. Now, Pike, of course, goes down there. I have a hard time believing that another narrative faux pas, I think. Like, I have a hard time believing they'd let anybody from Starfleet on Boreth. I don't think even Picard ever set foot on Boreth, and he was the, he was, what did they call him for the Chancellor, right? Anyway. Well, you know, there's an old Vulcan proverb.
Yeah.
Only Nixon could go to China.
Star Trek 6. Yeah, right. Bravo. Well, yeah. So I can't believe they'd let Pike down on that planet, but whatever. Okay, so they do. And Pike goes there. He ends up touching a time crystal, and of course, what happens is he sees his future of what's going to happen to him that we know happened in the original series, and what led to the events of the menagerie from season 1 of the original series, where Pike ends up burned and he can only answer yes or no with like this blinky wheelchair and all of this. I thought that was it was cool for him to see what happens, because we knew then, according to the story, it was because of an academy or an accident with some academy cadets that he ends up saving. It was interesting to see that that's what's going to end up happening. I kind of agree that it makes it more heroic, like he knows what's going to happen to him and he does it anyway.
Right.
Which adds on to the mystique or the prestige, I should say, of the character of Pike, which Discovery has had no problem with.
Right.
Go ahead.
I have a theory as to why this happened the way it did.
Let's have it.
I think the writers are very much aware that the performances are carrying the season. So they're writing moments for the characters or the actors to basically show off. And this sequence was like wonderfully performed and fantastic, but it does feel very much like, well, we wrote this sequence just for Anson Mount to basically show off.
Yeah. Which I mean, and I can believe what you're. I can see what you're saying, and not the worst idea, because a lot of the other writing is very questionable.
Right.
So show off who you can. You know?
Yeah. Play your strengths. Which I mean, like I said, and I'm not saying this is a criticism, because, like I said, the sequence was great in my opinion.
Yeah. No, I don't disagree with you on that at all. So. We get that, which I think, I mean, we had already gotten hints of the fact that, we're well aware of what happens to Pike. Like there's the fortune cookie that not every cage is a prison or something like that. And anyway, so, to give more hint to that was very nicely done, in my opinion. This episode, I mean, it's great to have Laurel back, because, I mean, I was missing, I don't know, it feels like they tried to make a big deal out of the Klingons, but I'm still not feeling like they're really utilizing the Klingons in any deeply meaningful way.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Like that's another area where I feel like they did some build up and they just kind of dropped it. And I think that has a lot to do with the change in the writers.
Right. And this one also, so yeah, I agree with that completely, because there has been a total 180 in really how they're treating the Klingons overall. Still not utilizing them well, though. But I mean, we didn't even get to see the D7 ship, if I remember. Like they said, a D7's approaching. Would have been great to have seen the D7.
Yeah. So far, what we've seen is the hologram that Laurel showed the High Council,
which was great. I was glad to see that. Yeah. Now another thing happens in this. Basically, Spock and Burnham are trying to put an end to, they're taking on control, and a very predictable thing happens. They save one person from the Section 31 ship that apparently Control ejected the entire crew out of. And you basically end up with, like, as soon as they brought this character on, I'm like, oh, that character survived because they're under control of Control. And that's exactly what ended up happening. And I was like, oh, guys, you're being too predictable now.
Yeah.
But now that lends itself, though, to a theory that's been going around that I want to touch on. And by the way, if anyone wants to find out more about Control and like kind of the ideas behind it, it's originally an idea by David Mack, done for a Section 31 book, which is technically not canon, called Control, that came out a couple of years ago. I totally recommend everybody read that. It's a tremendous book. David Mack's an awesome author. But anyway, there is the theory that Control, this AI, is going to effectively either create or be or whatever the Borg. And in fact, you kind of get a weird, because there's nanites involved, which is how it was explained in Voyager and in First Contact, that's how the Borg take you over, how you get assimilated. And I mean, how do you feel about this theory that, and even like when Leland gets injected by Control, it looks like the way the veins move and everything. It looks like the Borg.
The have like little green glowing bits and
right.
stuff. yeah, it looks like Borg technology.
Yeah. So how do you feel about this theory?
Like the black veins, which you saw like in
Right.
First Contact, when people got
Exactly.
assimilated, the little black veins would start splitting, throughout their face and stuff. Same thing. So yeah, it's hard to imagine that they didn't think people would pick up on that
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
and make that connection.
Yeah.
Now, whether it's actually the Borg or just sort of like a red herring, like they're trying to distract us, or
Mhm.
I don't know which it is. I'm kind of hoping it's the latter,
You
because
want
the
it to be a
Borg,
red herring?
yeah, to me the Borg, like, I don't know, like too many times it seems like Star Trek has used the Borg just because the Borg are cool.
Yeah. I mean, and it wouldn't even make sense. I mean, we
Right.
know there's time travel technology. Obviously, it's being used in Discovery, but like you encounter the Borg, and they're not time travelers. You encounter the Borg in Enterprise. I think it
Right.
was in season 2 or season 4, one of those.
Right.
Uh,
Those were Borg that were left over from their time incursion from First Contact.
they were.
Yeah.
I didn't think that. Oh, shit. Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
They found those Borg on Earth, remember?
Oh,
Initially,
right. They're frozen.
Yeah, they were frozen, and
Okay.
they were the Borg left over from the movie First Contact.
All right. No. All right. So you're right. Okay. So negate that. I mean, yeah. Basically, I think it's. I mean, I think there's been other things hinted at that the Borg have been around a lot longer than the 22nd century, or the 23rd century, I should say.
Right.
I think this would be really dumb to like, don't even bother trying to create an origin story for the Borg.
That's exactly my problem with that. Is that just trying to create, an origin story for the Borg where it wouldn't fit. And there's already been some funny stuff in the past with the Borg that just don't make sense, and to either just confuse it even more, it just kind of muddies the waters.
Yeah, I mean, I always liked when Gene Roddenberry said that, like, the machine planet that made V'ger in Star Trek: The Motion Picture, that was probably the Borg homeworld.
Right.
I thought that, I mean, and that never was made canon, but I'm like, well, that's great. Like that's a really cool idea. Way to go, Gene.
Yeah.
But I think to go any further than even that, I think would just be foolish. Like, leave them. And I mean, there's been, what was the game? Not Star Trek Armada. There's the one that Bethesda made. I can't think of the name. Anyway, but there was a Star Trek game where they tried to come up with a theory that it was like a Vulcan woman that created it, and that created Borg.
I mean, that's just all that kind of stuff where you're trying to basically blame humans or Vulcan or anybody in the Alpha Quadrant for the creation of the Borg. It's cheapens it to me.
I agree.
It ruins the Borg. Like the origins of the Borg should be like, more bizarre and interesting than just, we accidentally created the Borg.
Yeah, it would I think any origin story honestly would take away from the horror of the Borg.
Yeah.
The terrifying part of it, because it's like, wait, what even society would come up with this,
And they've already diminished that horror enough in Star Trek. I mean, like, even First Contact to a certain degree does that. So like, just this point, unless you're going to play up those elements, just leave it alone.
Right. Yeah. So I'm just hoping that that's not going to be what happens. I mean,
yeah, me too.
Yeah, but I don't know.
Yeah.
Because I mean, like when the Ash Tyler Vogue theories came out, like those ended up being very true, and those were very early on too. I just don't want it to happen. I'll just say that much. So, and hopefully we get some kind of payoff as far as, because it gets reiterated in this episode as well, that the 7 signals are something else. They are not related to the Red Angel at all, which again, I think leads to that there was some kind of narrative shift that occurred in mid-season by the writing team. Another storyline that's in this, and it's been an interesting one that's run a few episodes ever since Dr. Culber came back, is the relationship between Culber and Stamets. So Culber is dealing with the fact, like, I was dead, I came back. Like, what does that even mean for me? And so he's wrestling with that, dealing with that, and he's not in a relationship with Paul Stamets because of this. We get some resolution, or what appears to be some resolution, due to the entrance of Jet Reno in this episode, which, of course, being played by Tig Notaro, yeah, and which she does great. This is another, when she comes in, she talks to Stamets like they've been hanging out a lot. And it's another one of those instances where I'm like, where are those scenes? Give me those scenes where they've been hanging out.
You know what Jet Reno is?
What?
She's the Star Wars Resistance Aces of Star Trek.
We're just waiting for her. Come back.
Yeah, like, where is she? Come on.
Yeah. But when she comes in, you're excited for 5 minutes.
Right. She's gone again.
Right.
For another 5 episodes.
And of course, if anybody wants to listen to TIE Fighter Renegades to hear us talk more about those aces, or what we can talk about them, you can go listen to that. But yeah, good call. But she comes in, she's dynamite. I love the fact, because she has a conversation with Culver, and she's hilarious. I love that, because Tig Notaro, of course, is a lesbian in real life, and she is playing one as well on TV, and great. I thought that was a really nice little, because she talks about her wife, who she was married to, who died. Again, I feel like the Jet Reno's injection into that little storyline, that side story, I didn't feel like there was enough backstory to that, to where she had the right to do it. It was well done. It was well executed, but there was no purchase.
Yeah. It's here again. I very much feel like the writers are, trying very hard to play on their strengths and give these actors opportunities to perform really well. And that's exactly what they did here.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, there's just not enough backstory to support these great moments.
Yeah. And there's even a point where Admiral Cornwell is talking to Dr. Culber about trying to get him back on duty or whatever. And of course, we do know that Cornwell she was some kind of psychologist or something, or psychiatrist. Not the same thing, but it was one of those. And she's talking to him, and she says to him, doctor, your very existence makes us question all of our notions of identity. And then she goes on to give him the standard fair Starfleet pep talk. And I'm like, whoa, wait a minute. Could we have a conversation about what this means about identity? It's like Genesis 6 verse 4. It's like, and in the earth in those days, there's these, giants, these Nephilim, and they had babies with women. Whoa, you got one verse here. Could you expand on that, please? It was so weird.
Well, not only that, having a character with that kind of backstory, it's another missed opportunity, because I feel like a lot of these characters in this show are suffering from some serious PTSD.
Uh-huh.
And that's something they could definitely use that character to play up on and actually address. But no, all these people are just kind of running around like crazy with this unprocessed trauma, and just, kind of like a bull in a china shop.
Yeah. You're yes, well said. And you're hitting on something that I have a little bit of a problem with Discovery as well. Shows in the past, Next Generation, original series, even Deep Space Nine, and so on, were constantly appealing to your humanity. Okay. And any moral point that they were making, and there were plenty of moral stories, any moral point that they were making was related to humanity in general. It feels like in Discovery, everything is, well, this goes against Starfleet conduct, or this goes against the morals of Starfleet. And I feel like there's like you said, PTSD, there's a lot of very genuine issues you could really stop, breathe, and touch on, and talk about, and have a real conversation about, and have a moral story. But instead, they're just buck up, we're Starfleet and we're going to go do it. And it's like, wait, no. Picard wouldn't do that. Picard would go in his ready room and skulk for a minute, at least. And we don't get any of that. And that's disappointing too. And I think it's a little strange at that. I don't know if it's just like pedestrian writing or what it is, but this appeal to Starfleet and not humanity also feels a little odd.
Yeah. Gosh, it's I almost wonder if this is another thing that's just kind of like, they're trying to speak to this generation.
Yeah.
And it almost comes off as a little condescending.
Ooh. Yeah, keep going.
Because I mean, it's just like that whole like buck up, we're Starfleet thing is, it's like, and I know, and I don't, disagree with anybody who feels this way. A lot of younger people or even millennials feel like they've been dealt a shit hand, and like the answer being given by them and to them is, hey, buck up, this is life, deal with it. And yeah, it like I said, it kind of comes off as a little condescending.
Right. I mean, certainly I can think of episodes of even Next Generation where like, hey, you're a Starfleet officer, you need to be a professional and all that, like where that kind of thing had come down. But there were plenty of times where there was like, I mean, even Star Trek 3, the movie, is saying, no, there are things more important than fucking Starfleet, and I'm going to go steal the Enterprise and go save my best friend. I mean, and I don't know. There's something I agree with. I think your assessment might be really honest.
Yeah. That's it's another point is like the kind of like the Starfleet that we're used to is one that's like Starfleet is ethical because it's made up of ethical people, not that the people are ethical because Starfleet is ethical.
Right.
Right. It's the people that make the organization.
That is very well said, and I think that's something missing in the writer's room. Or somewhere, and because it feels, I don't know, because even the organization, I mean, well, that gets into a bigger conversation around Section 31 and all this.
Right.
Why that exists, especially when Starfleet knows that it exists, which is kind of strange and all of that. I actually do want to touch. Go ahead.
It's talked about so openly during this era, and where is the preceding eras of Star Trek? It's like this big, huge secret.
Yeah, it's very shadowy.
And Discovery, it's just like this big open secret. Everybody knows about it.
Yeah. Which there's some precedent for that, I think, because I think in the Kelvin timeline, I think Admiral Marcus would have revealed Section 31 eventually.
That's the thing is like I can understand Admiral Cornwell knowing about Section 31, but there's no freaking reason Pike should have known about Section 31.
Right.
Even though he has apparently a past, dealings with Leland.
Yeah.
And no way should Leland ever let out of the bag to Pike that he was Section 31 or what Section 31 was.
Right. Yeah, exactly. I know there's a big conversation being had, around that, where like what's going to happen here? Is it just going to go back underground? Why, a lot of people are complaining that, oh, wait, Section 31 is out in the open. And that seems to kind of break canon. I think there's ways that you could kind of explain it, especially if you understand like Control, the way that David Mack made it is basically you find out that Section 31 is like brought back and destroyed as needed by Control, right, to keep Starfleet and the Federation going.
And that would be cool if that's what they were doing, but obviously they have different plans for Control and Discovery.
Yeah. So I'm not sure, where they're going to go with this. I mean, Alex Kurtzman has come out and said that, you were going to find out how Section 31 became a shadowy organization, but it seems like it was before as well, because, like in Enterprise, Section 31 exists because Malcolm is part of it.
Right.
Right. So
drag back in. Yeah. But even then it was like, Archer didn't know about Section 31, did he?
No.
Yeah. So I mean, like there's no reason like any Starfleet captain,
right?
Even the commander of the flagship should know about Section 31. That should be like admirals only information.
Yeah. So it's kind of.
And I agree. Like, I think there are ways that they can explain it, but it's kind of like time's running out. I feel like on that for them to resolve that. And here again, it like I don't want to get another rushed explanation.
Right. We don't need another Red Angel. We don't need another Arium Death. We don't need, it needs to be something that, I don't know, they've got to lead into it somehow.
Yeah.
I'm worried about this because we only have 2 episodes left.
Yeah, and not only that, I mean, like if they resolve this storyline with anything less than Control being completely destroyed and done away with, it makes no sense. Like, it's too dangerous to keep around.
Yeah. So now in David Mack's book, Control actually exists well into the 24th century, and actually Data and Bashir and a recreated Lull have to destroy it, and they do. So spoiler alerts, folks, it's still worth a read. But I mean, I'm not saying they have to follow that, because they're already kind of not following what David Mack put down. But yeah, I agree with you. I feel like there are way too many. There's too many loose ends for 2 episodes to tie up very well. And Alex Kurtzman also came out and said that the last episode is going to fix, or, he says the season finale is you're not going to expect it. And it's going to resolve all kinds of things. Like, it's going to be this really far out thing. I can't imagine what the hell that's going to be. I'm not even going to try, because I think that a lot of the answers we've gotten so far have not been satisfactory anyway.
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, what do you have any theories? What do you think is going to end up happening?
I do not have any theories. And like yourself, I cannot imagine what it is they're going to do. And I almost wonder if, Kurtzman is just trying to placate people.
Right.
I'm kind of skeptical as to whether or not we're going to get the kind of payoff he's talking about.
Yeah, I agree. I don't have. I mean, I'm enjoying. Again, there's a lot I'm enjoying about Discovery. I just don't have the confidence in the production team here.
That's funny. Like, the more we start talking about it, the closer I get to your opinion on this.
See?
Overall. But I still like I do feel like the things that are good about this show are really good.
Yeah,
the things that get right, they get really right.
Yeah, I mean, overall, I like what they've done with Section 31. I think Georgiou's great. Pike is great. There have been some episodes this season that have been solid. I thought the treatment of the Telosians was well done. Now it feels kind of cheapened, but that episode New Eden from earlier in the season I thought was really cool. But now it feels, I don't know. We were even told originally that this was supposed to be a season that was going to explore like the nature of God and science.
Right. And that's what I was talking about earlier, is like, there was definitely this obsession with kind of spiritual matters, and especially death.
Yeah.
As almost like a palpable entity,
right.
And they like I said, they completely dropped that. And that was really interesting to me.
Yeah, like that's the kind of exploration that Star Trek really does. The exploration of the human condition, not of the galaxy. The galaxy is just the stage, and yeah, I felt like, I don't know, whatever they were planning with that must have dropped off somewhere, or I don't know how they can resolve all this in 2 episodes. That's really the bottom line here.
Yeah. Well, we do have season 3 confirmed, right?
We do.
I mean, like, they might not resolve everything that we're talking about here.
Yeah, I mean, if they're willing to play the long game, I'll ride the long game. I'm more than happy to do that. I mean, as a Babylon 5 fan, we all know how to play the long game. That's fine.
Yeah, if anything, it would be more encouraging if we did know that they were playing the long game.
Well, that's it. Just tell us, that, okay, don't worry, we're going to resolve it in season 3. Okay.
Right. Yeah. That would be more comforting than Kurtzman saying, oh, everything's going to be resolved in the last episode of the season.
Right.
That makes me more uncomfortable.
Right, exactly.
If he had come out and said, we're playing a long game here, and we're gonna, not everything's gonna be resolved at the end of the season, things are gonna carry over in season 3, that would give me a whole lot more confidence into, the future of this show.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with you. And well, I mean, there's going to be, as of when this gets released, there will be a new episode tonight, and then there's the season finale after that. I know I did see in the recent trailers there is some Enterprise action coming, as in the NCC 1701, which great. If we could see a Constitution class go out there and kick some ass, I'm all for that.
Hopefully that's more number 1.
Yeah, really, because I thought Rebecca Romaine did a great job.
Yeah.
For the episode she was in.
Here again, this is more reason to give Pike his own show and just to like have like, the pre, Kirk Enterprise series.
Oh, it'd be awesome.
It would.
Yeah.
I would love it.
I'll deal with Ethan Peck as Spock for that too.
Yeah.
I mean, shit, like, and lead it right up, end it in like 5 seasons, or hell, if you want to just do 4, and have it end with, with Pike handing over the baton to Kirk, and bring him right in. I think that'd be fantastic.
Or even end it with where it picks up in the beginning of season 2 of Discovery, where Pike takes over the Discovery. If you want to do a
pre-one, yeah.
That's what I'm saying. Like Pike has already been in command of Enterprise for like more than like at least 5 years.
Yeah, right.
By the time he takes over Discovery, so there's lots you could do there.
Yeah, agreed. And I wish they would. I really wish they would. So, well, I mean, I guess we'll, we're going to see these next 2 episodes are going to be very interesting. We're going to have a very interesting next Sovryn Trek when you're on again, Rob, because we're going to do we'll do an overview, or we'll do a review of those 2 episodes, but then we'll do a full-on overview of the season. And I mean, it's really just doing this episode with you was difficult because so much happens in these episodes, and it feels like there's a ton of storylines going on, but then at the same time, it happens so fast you can't really even remember or think about it all.
You
get no time to process anything. It's no surprise that the characters don't process shit.
It's kind of interesting that it's like it's almost like it's unique form of Trek PTSD. We have ourselves processed as the audience everything that's gone on in the series, and we're kind of experiencing the same sort of emotional instability that the characters are.
Yeah, exactly. Right. I mean, they got to slow the show so far down. I mean, just take a breather
and goddamn people, have some fucking levity, just a little.
Yeah. And levity beyond, I mean, you got, if you can get Jet Reno for next season, just get her on the bridge, do whatever you got to do.
Yeah. Make her a regular cast member.
Yeah. Because she's the only one delivering it right now, in my opinion.
Yeah. Because I mean, because like you mentioned, the Spock humor isn't really hitting, so that's kind of like that's not scratching that particular itch. Yeah. I know we're not going to get it. I really do wish. Maybe my number one complaint, other than the timing, I really do wish we'd get more of the Vulcan Burnham. I don't know. I mean, Sonequa Martin Green is acting her ass off, but it's it doesn't feel right. I don't know. Well, they can't continue this pace with the character that they're doing right now. It's too much.
Right.
So I have to imagine that is going to come back at some point.
Yeah.
I can understand why it is the way it is right now, just because of the circumstances she's in. But yeah, it's too much. I mean, if they keep this up, she'll be in a mental institution by the end of season 3.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I agree. If not before.
Right.
Yeah, it's so crazy. So, well, anyway, there is a review of, that was a lot of episodes. From Light and Shadows all the way up through the Valley of Shadows. There's so much to consume there. There's so much that really did happen. And even visually, just to take in, it was really something. So I hope the season ends strong, but I don't know. I don't know how this is going to work out. So we will certainly see. Anything you want to end off with, Robin?
No, you'll just have to tune into next month to find out.
That's right. Yeah. We'll give a full breakdown with, critiques in hand, I'm sure, for the next episode of Sovryn Trek. And anyway, I'll be right back with some more because I've got a comic book to review. So we'll get into that. And Robin, as always, man, thanks for being on Sovryn Trek.
And thank you for having me.
Right on.
From Big Finish Productions, Blake 7, The Classic Audio Adventures.
I'm taking Liberator in on manual. We'll be in teleport range in 2 minutes.
What the hell was that?
Information. Liberator has been attacked.
You don't say.
Put up the force wall. Confirm.
Message to all ground commanders. Initiate the final phase. Let's crush these rebels once and for all.
My name is Avon. Kerr Avon.
Kerr Avon.
Our hostage arrives. Which you may be unnecessary.
As a hostage, it's nice to be superfluous.
You can go to Blake7.com to find more of the new adventures of one of science fiction's greatest masterpieces, Blake 7, at Blake7.com.
I tell you, it's always a pleasure to work with that guy. We have the best time. But anyway, again, we will be back later this month to do a full review of season 2 and review the final 2 episodes of the season, and maybe potentially look at what's going to be coming up for season 3 if we're left with another cliffhanger, because we did have a cliffhanger in season 1. I mean, it was an unexpected one. It didn't have to do with carrying on a storyline really from anything that happened in season 1, but we'll see. So anyway, I want to get into and talk about something that came out very recently, which is another Star Trek Discovery comic, which there's other comic book series I have to review that have, like the Star Trek versus Transformers from IDW, that I thought was really well done, but I want to get into a full review of that. We'll save that for next month. But this one I think is appertinent to what's going on in Discovery right now. And there's actually some really good things, because like I said, when talking to Rob, I'm feeling a little down about Discovery, but there's a couple of points within this Captain Saru comic that give me a little bit of hope, but I don't know how much stock to put into it. So anyway, artistry being done by Angel Hernandez, who does a tremendous job throughout the artwork in this comic, and it's a longer comic. It ends up chalking up to about 45 pages, which the average comic book today is a little over 20, so it's almost double-sized. And you have, again, that's just raw story pages, no ads or anything if you buy the print version. But Star Trek Discovery Captain Saru, written by Kirsten Beyer, and being joined up by Mike Johnson again, which the two of them have done previous Star Trek Discovery comic books. Kirsten Beyer, of course, one of the people in charge of the writing room at Star Trek Discovery proper, the TV show. And she is a tremendous novelist. I am a fan of her work. She does great work with Star Trek. She knows Star Trek. This book, basically, it takes place between season 1, or actually it takes place between the last episode of season 1. It takes place between the moment that the Discovery encounters the Enterprise, right, the NCC 1701, and right after the big speech that Michael Burnham gives at the end of it while they're still in Paris, because the comic book opens up in Paris, France, with Saru and Michael Burnham talking. It's a mini-adventure that occurs where Discovery is still undergoing repairs, basically has to go rescue Tilly, who is on a ship, the USS Dorothy Gerard, I think it is. Anyway. And that ship has been commandeered by Orions, which it's always nice to get more of the Orions, in my opinion. They are one of my favorite Star Trek races, bar none, have been forever. And even going back to the Cage, right? Woo! But it's really nice to have the Orions back in this. And Saru, you definitely delve more. I mean, Saru has become a major fan favorite of a character. And amazingly, it feels like he's so easy to write, because this comic book is obviously about him, and he is basically, for the duration of this little mission that happens in between moments of the season finale of season 1, he's captain, and he's doing the business, and it works. It really works. And there's a lot of commentary about, now I've said this in previous Sovryn Treks, that I think Saru is going to, I said this months ago, that Saru is going to end up being captain of the Discovery. And we'll see if that actually pans out. But Michael Burnham in this comic really, really hints hard at that Saru should be captain. Like, she wants that to happen. And I think in many ways this is getting people ready for the concept, for the idea that Saru is going to be captain of the Discovery. Unless, and I don't know if this is true, unless maybe they can't, Doug Jones has become a very big deal. The actor that plays Saru, ever since Star Trek Discovery started. Like, he's become a bigger deal with Shape of Water and so many other things. I kind of wonder, a part of me wonders if Saru's even going to survive all this, right? If he's going to survive Discovery, if he's even going to survive into season 3. I don't know. Maybe Doug Jones wants to go off and do something other than television, even though Discovery isn't exactly a long season. We only get 14 episodes this season. It's pretty short stuff, so I don't know how different it is from making a movie, but maybe that's not a big deal to him. Anyway, just something that I'm wondering about. But they're really giving him, they're really pushing this idea of Captain Saru on the show, and obviously this comic book as well. It's an enjoyable little, you get more Saru action. You get to see his super strength and speed, in action. You get to, the best part for this, actually, for me, is that you end up getting to, there are references, direct references, and comic books do this all the time, where like there'll be a little asterisk or something in a word bubble that'll say, see issue, Avengers number, 221 to find out more about this. They do that a couple times in this comic book, where they are referencing events that happened in two Star Trek Discovery novels, that being Fear Itself, and the other one, which is actually a Saru-centered novel that came out earlier last year, and then Away to the Stars, which came out earlier this year in January, which was all about Tilly. And to reference the novels and start to try and create this like entire mythos around Discovery is really endearing to me, for one, and it's comforting, because we were being sold, much like Disney did with Star Wars. Back in 2013, they said, oh yeah, the novels, the comics, it's all going to be one big universe. Everything that happens here is going to matter here, blah, blah, blah. We were being told the same thing by CBS, that with Discovery, the novels are canon, the comic books are canon for Discovery. Not for anything else, but just for Discovery. And it's all one big universe. Well, this comic book did a good job of, at the very least, recognizing that there is more in this sandbox, and kind of making them within a shared universe. Now, I'll feel better when Discovery references more of these novels, or even events that happen in the comic books. That would be great if they did that. I really, really want that to happen. They're spending enough time doing canon connections, dropping Jonathan Archer's name or whatever, to that only nerds, only like really, Star Trek sweaties are going to really grasp. So there's no reason for them not to continue that, in my opinion, and just like drop hints of events or names that occurred in the novels and comic books. In fact, one of the things that I loved about Succession was the kind of the sequel comic book series to the events that occurred in the Mirror Universe in season 1 of Star Trek Discovery. The fate of the character of Ariam, which we were just complaining about, Rob and I, the fate of that character is awesome. It's a far better storyline in Succession, in that comic series, than in any, which is already run and done, and I reviewed it in past Sovryn Treks. It's far better than what they didn't happen to her in the Prime universe. So yeah, check that out if you haven't. It's a worthy read. But Captain Saru, it's a simple jaunt, a simple little adventure. It gives you more Saru, and the people that love Saru want as much Saru as they can get, I'm sure. And this services them. But the main takeaway from this, it's a totally fine comic book. It gives us more Orions, which is cool. In fact, like the captain of the Orion ship is a woman, which I also like that, because it's a little bit of a bulwark against the animal woman thing, even though we know that there's kind of the idea around the Orion animal woman is not as simple as they are just like pleasure slaves or something. There's a lot more to that than, when you watch Enterprise, you learn all about that. So anyway, it was cool to have the Orions involved in it, and anytime you can get more of them, I think that's great. And also, again, to have more connections within Discovery's own intra-canon, I guess you could say, where it's referencing the novels and so on. I thought that was a nice touch, and it might be the best thing to come out of this comic book than anything else, really. So not a whole lot to say about it. Again, it does solidify, Saru more as potentially becoming a captain, showing that he has the qualities, he has what it takes, etc., and he wants it even. And Michael Burnham wants it for him, which I think is also important, because I can imagine there's a lot of people out there that don't read the comics or books, and just kind of watch the show, not lazily, but they just enjoy the show and the show for what it is. We're probably hoping that Michael Burnham ends up becoming captain at some point. I'm not saying I'm opposed to that either. I'm just saying that I think all signs point at Saru. A little too hard sometimes, which makes you wonder if the character is going to die off, and we'll just have his shining moment as a captain, and then he has the history of being told that, oh, you'd make a great captain, so when he dies as a captain, and even if it's only a short time frame that he's captain, that it's still a meaningful one. At least Discovery has paid that bill. We were just talking about how Discovery tries to give you all these emotional moments, and it feels like they didn't earn it, right? Like they didn't do enough to give that moment, that cool moment or that emotional moment or that tragic moment meaning. With Saru, if they did the killing off of Saru, short-lived as a captain and all this, I think that would have enough meaning with a lot of especially with a lot of this extraneous content, even though it's kind of standard fare, I could get into a much bigger conversation around that, but this episode has gone on long enough, so do check out the Captain Saru comic. I thought it was just a fun little jaunt, and again, I do appreciate that with Kirsten Beyer on board, they were trying to connect it with other, it's not extracurricular, it's canon, but with other material that's not the TV show within the Star Trek Discovery mythos. I really, really like that. So anyway, you have another Sovryn Trek coming out this month. Just in a couple weeks, you're going to have that. And but we'll wrap this baby up. Make sure, if you haven't, I'd love it. In fact, I want to hear from you. Give me your feedback come May, if you decide to go to theaters, okay, to go see What We Left Behind. And again, when it comes out on May 13th, if you check that out, I'd love to hear other people's reviews, and I'll read them right on the air on Sovryn Trek. So go for that. Anyway, that's it for this episode. I will see all of you on the other side.